everyone, and welcome back to another episode of In the Leadership Lounge with Dr. Shanesia Davis, where we embark on more impactful leadership. It's not about perfection, it's not about a rival, it is about a journey where you get to evolve with the needs of your community that you serve, evolve with the needs of yourself, evolve with the needs of our ever-changing world. Its title is Deeper Than You Think: How Unhealed Trauma Informs the Systems of Our Leadership. Today, really, I want us to reflect, to engage in deep self-reflection about how our leadership aligns with what we say we value. Today, we're going to explore how our internal systems form. Then we're going to share a real life scenario and unpack how teams respond to that leadership. We're going to end with some small but powerful strategies that you can utilize to repair teams and team dynamics starting today. To get us started, I want to start with a reflection question. If somebody was just watching your leadership for a week, what would they say you value? Because leadership isn't just a role, it's relational. Listen, we are not machines, we're humans. And no matter how evolved we feel as though we are as leaders or as individuals in general, we're carrying things that we've lived through, most times unintentionally, but oftentimes we lead through it. As we begin to talk about how our internal systems are formed, I want to ground us in something that we may be more accustomed to speaking about, right? External systems of oppression. For example, systemic racism. Many of us know that systemic racism shapes the institutions that we encounter today. It shapes education, it shapes the criminal justice system, it shapes housing, it shapes healthcare, so on and so forth. So although racism itself isn't widely acceptable or acceptable in public now, its residue still permeates all of those institutions that we interact with and that govern us. Similarly, our unhealed trauma does the same thing within us. Although we don't see the wounds or we don't know how the trauma is impacting us, its residue lives out in our everyday life. And our leadership is not excluded from that. You may have forgotten that that wound exists. You may not even be able to tangibly name where that trauma came from, but your nervous system will always remember. Because remember, it was designed to allow us to survive. Therefore, it's designed to keep us safe. So those unhealed wounds, they leak. They leak in our everyday lives, they leak in our leadership. And it may show up in our language. It can show up in our sense of urgency. It shows up in what we prioritize. It shows up in what we avoid. So if unchecked, it creates the culture for our team. Now, keep in mind, these aren't just habits, they're structures. But see, here's the real danger. The longer we lead from this unhealed system, the more it becomes institutionalized, the more it becomes normalized to where we don't even check that behavior anymore. Let's get into a real life scenario. I'm going to introduce Monica. And I'm going to read about Monica because I want to make sure that all of the nuances are there. Names have been changed. So if there's a Monica listening to this podcast, I am not talking about you. Monica, she's a leader, a respected leader. Everybody describes her as dedicated, right? She shows up early. She leaves late. She remembers those small things about her team that makes them feel seen. Some of her team admires her and some of her team fears her. Many are inspired by how hard she works and how much she gives. But some things always just feel harder than they have to be. Tension in meetings don't always last long, but not because it's resolved. It may be because it's quickly redirected. Encouragement sometimes replaces clarity, whereas a directive may show up in moments where discussion would be able to be more impactful in the moment. Some people hesitate. They start to hold back. They take on more than they should, not because she asked them to, but because they're responding to something unspoken. Monica didn't just pick up this pattern, she built a system. But it didn't start at work. It started at home. It started with child Monica. It started in her home when there were times where she realized if she was able to read the room and she was able to control or set up the environment in a specific way, she was safe. There was less arguments. There was less tension. There was less conflict. She learned that praise was given when directions were followed. And then this was reinforced in past roles for Monica, right? So as my little child, Monica grew up into adult Monica, and these things that her nervous system took notes on were reinforced as an adult. In her roles, honesty had consequences, and it was safer to just do what you were told. And over time, that became Monica's patterns. And now her leadership is structured around certainty versus curiosity. She's not a bad leader. She's committed. She's values driven. She wants to get it right. but she's leading from a system that once protected her. And she didn't necessarily evolve that system to fit the new demands of what brings her and her team to the next level. So now she quietly shapes how others show up around her. That tension lives in the gap between what she says she values, but what her team is actually experiencing. What she names is that she wants her culture to be innovative and she wants individuals to take initiative, but her behavior shows that she values things being done her way, on her timing. See, here's the part that we rarely say out loud. Those systems don't only stick with us, they permeate into our teams. They start to influence the way or our journey towards that shared vision. So let's talk a little bit about what Monica's team is learning, not in what Monica is telling them to do or sharing what she expects. They're learning from the patterns that they're seeing. Their nervous system is starting to take notes about what makes them survive in this work environment. Monica's team is starting to learn that urgency is important. Monica's team is starting to learn that overworking shows that you're valuable. Monica's team is learning that feedback is risky and that they can receive feedback, but they can't necessarily give feedback. Monica's team is also learning that although Monica's door is always open, real honest conversation isn't necessarily always open. Over time, the team starts to adapt in ways that Monica didn't intend. Her team stops asking questions out of fear that it looks like pushback. Her team starts to overly rely on her approval, and she gets frustrated that her leaders aren't leading. Her team may model her sense of urgency but forego a sense of preparation that they once had. Where once Monica was getting alternative perspectives, there might be silence now when she's asking out of fear that it looks like disloyalty. Unintended, Monica is teaching them what's welcome and what's not welcome, what's rewarded and what will not be rewarded. And all of this is happening through real time. It's happening through her language that she's choosing. It's happening through the timing, is happening through her emotional cues. One thing that I really want to drive home in this episode is that we're leading the culture even in our silence, because our patterns, what we value, and our internal systems influence how other people experience our leadership. I want to bring back that question from earlier. If somebody was watching your leadership for a week, what would they say you value? Reflect on that so that you can identify what unhealed wound or what trauma might be influencing an area of your leadership that could benefit from you recognizing and repairing. And again, all of us have it, right? All of us have it. None of us are immune to it because all of us are human and impacted by the experiences that we've lived through. So as we think about what unhealed wound or what unchecked thing may be leaking into our leadership, let's talk a little bit about repair. Practical small shifts to repair what might be influencing our leadership. You're a step ahead of us if you've already gotten some feedback and your teams trusted you enough to share what it is that they felt as though you can do better in your leadership. Let's talk repair now, right? And I want us to keep in mind that, again, leadership is a journey, so we're constantly evolving. So even if you feel as though you have great safety on your team, it doesn't mean that there's not a space where we can improve. First, you acknowledge the gaps. Second, you name the impact. Third, you clarify your commitment. Fourth, you create space for voice. Lastly, you rebuild in practice. Okay, let's hop into repair. We're going to go through all the 5 steps that I just mentioned together with one scenario: a leader that you need to take initiative. Who's not? And I think it's really important to stamp right here that this is not about lowering your expectations at all. On the contrary, it's about providing the supports necessary to hold your team accountable. This is just about a self-check from within, a self-check to see how your unhealed trauma or past wounds might be impacting how your team shows up. This is you doing your due diligence to make sure you're showing your best version of wherever you are today to help your team move towards that shared vision. Step 1, acknowledging the gap might go something like this. I've been reflecting on how I show up as a leader, and I really want to name something that I think may have been impacting the way we collaborate. I often challenge the direction of your decisions, and while I thought that I was pushing for clarity, I'm now realizing that it may have come across that I don't trust your thinking. Okay, that's step 1, acknowledge the gap. Now we're going to name the impact. And this is really about naming some of that emotional residue that we were talking about earlier in the episode. You get to say, while that wasn't my intention, if it's made you second guess your decisions or your approach, I want to own that. My intention is to create space, not added pressure. Now you've acknowledged the gap, you've taken ownership by naming the impact. Now we're going to clarify your commitment, because sometimes asking for things to change without acknowledging it or naming what you're going to do differently may feel like gaslighting to your team. It may go something like, I'm committing to shifting that because I want you to know that I do trust your decision making and I value what you have to bring to our team. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause and refrain from the initial question asking. I'm going to give you the space to kind of walk me through your decision making so that you feel backed and supported and not questioned. I do want to be able to build to help us come up with our best possible solution, but I want to make sure that I'm focusing on where we're aligned. Now, this is very important. This step number 4 is where we create space for voice. And we don't want to assume that the way that we're going to address it is the way that this individual may feel the most supported. So this may sound like, does that shift in my practice feel more supportive for you? And then you may also give them space to share, if it wasn't, what may feel more supportive for them. Last but not least, this is where we rebuild in practice, because we know behavior doesn't change overnight. Remember, these were the instincts that were systematized internally due to past situations. Because of that, we have to build in the small changes to help shift that culture in the direction that we would like for it to see. For example, you may build enough feedback time for the decision making, right? You might discuss where in the decision making process does that feedback time come from you, so that you still give the support and direction as a leader without stifling the voice and the tendency to take initiative from your team member. So, as a reminder, leadership is always relational. And in order to lead others, we have to lead our patterns, not just our people. I would like to name that in times, this is going to be really uncomfortable. But it's really important because these systems that once kept us safe may now be keeping ourselves as well as our teams small. And again, this is not commentary, this is not critique. This is for all of us. This could feel like an ego check for many of us, but this is really about reclaiming your power as a leader, because you get to decide now how your systems are going to serve you moving forward. I truly appreciate you embarking on this journey with me into more impactful leadership. If anything in this episode resonated with you, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a leader who you feel as though it may resonate with them as well. Don't forget to check back in with episodes 1 and 2 if you missed it. Until next time, remember to lead from within.